Today on Locked On Blue Jackets, we are going to be talking about yet another young Blue Jacket player that made his debut this season. We're going to be talking all about Jake Christiansen, and I've got a couple of listener questions for a mini Monday mailbag. That's all coming up today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you news, stories, rumors, trials, tribulations, excitement, everything in between, all of those things for your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and also over on YouTube. We are super close to another milestone over there, which is very, very exciting for me personally. So if you haven't subscribed, then maybe go and hit the subscribe button over there, just as a favor to me personally. I appreciate it. In today's episode, like I said at the top, we are going to be doing a little bit of a mailbag at the end of the episode, but most of the episode we are going to be talking about Jake Christiansen, another good young player for the Blue Jackets. I've been kind of looking at a 25 under 25 type thing for the Blue Jackets, and man, Blue Jackets have a lot of players under 25. I think Jake Christiansen might be one of the more surprising ones, honestly. So let's take a little bit of a look into how he kind of got where he is. This was only his second year pro. He had kind of an abbreviated season last season, played 28 games with the Cleveland Monsters in the shortened 2021 season, 15 points in 28 games. He was, I believe, not drafted by anyone, which is kind of wild. He ended up doing 4 years with the Everett Silvertips in the WHL, and then that's my mistake. He 4 years with the Monsters. He was with the Stockton Heat in the 1920 season after he finished his season with the Silvertips, and then signed with the Monsters as a free agent, and it looks like that has been a pretty good signing for the Blue Jackets. He was the Monsters' best player last season by a country mile, had 45 points in 62 games, led the Monsters in scoring despite playing like 15 less games than anyone else on the team. I mean, the Monsters were pretty bad last season, but even so, that's still pretty impressive, in my opinion. And he has just kind of gone from strength to strength. He made his NHL debut with the Blue Jackets, kind of a surprise to everyone, I think, except, including him, actually. I think at the start of the season, if you'd said, oh, yeah, Jake Christiansen is going to be making his NHL debut this season, I don't think anyone would have been like, oh, yeah, definitely, that's obviously going to happen. But, like we talked about before, lots of injury issues for the Blue Jackets on defense, and Jake Christiansen was playing so well for the Monsters, they were like, hey, let's give him a shot. Made his NHL debut, scored his first NHL goal, was one of like 8 Blue Jackets to do that this season, I feel like, and honestly, didn't look out of place on the blue line, considering how young and inexperienced this blue line is. He fit in pretty well, and I don't think he necessarily looked like he was the youngest or the least experienced out there. Honestly, I think he made much more of an impact in those 8 games than for example, Scott Harrington did in about the same amount of ice time. I think Jake Christiansen was a real kind of, hey, we know kind of what we have with our draft pick prospect pool, but hey, let's complicate it a little bit. Let's mix things up. Let's bring a guy like Jake Christiansen in. And suddenly he seems to have kind of become one of the more exciting defensive prospects. Obviously, that's kind of shuffled around a little bit. with the drafting of Matejchuk and Jiricek, with Svozil and Knazko kind of making their marks in the CHL at the minute. It's gotten pretty crowded on that blue line prospect pool, and unfortunately, I think Jake Christiansen may have slipped down a couple of spots. I'm not super enthusiastic about that because I do think, like I said, I think he played really well this season, especially for the Monsters. Like I said, best player for the Monsters by a mile, and honestly, I don't understand why he only got 8 games. Looking at the players that the Blue Jackets were kind of working with at that point of the season, like I would have taken Jake Christiansen, like I said, over Scott Harrington, who admittedly he wasn't on the team at the time. I would have taken Jake Christiansen over Gavin Bayreuther, honestly. And I think that's kind of neat, honestly. Having a guy like Christensen who is good and young and exciting, and then being like, well, maybe he won't make the team, like that's a really good problem to have. If you have too many good young defensemen, like I'm not mad about that. That's all coming up in a minute. First, I've got to tell you about one of our new partners that will be doing some work with the NHTSA. And are you one of those people that thinks it's okay to drive stoned? Like, what's the worst that could happen? You end up driving a little bit below the speed limit. It's no big deal, right? Well, wrong. When you're stoned, your reaction times slow way down. You put yourself in danger. You put everyone around you in danger. That's the real buzzkill here. So stop kidding yourself. It is not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. So the theme of these kind of season reviews, second/third segments have kind of been, man, who is going to be playing for the Blue Jackets in this kind of upcoming season? Because the Blue Jackets have about 700 defensemen signed, and they've got more coming in because, again, Jiricek could make this team. Um, Obviously, the departure of Gabriel Carlson has kind of eased up on that a little bit. The departure of Dean Kukan has eased up on that a little bit, but even with that, we're looking at the Blue Jackets have 8 defensemen on the roster right now in Werenski, Gabranson, Gavrikov, Bean, Boquist, Blankenberg, Peak, Bayreuther. And then, we're looking at guys like Christiansen. We're looking at David Jiricek. We're looking at Denton Matejchuk. We're looking at Samuel Knazko. We're looking at Stanislav Svozil. Like, that's a lot of defensemen to try and fit into this. And if it were up to me, I think Jake Christiansen might be in that kind of top 7. Unfortunately, we have to give a space to Gabranson. We probably have to give a space to Peak. I'm not as mad about Peak as I am about Gabranson, but beside the point. And so, honestly, our 7 defensemen are probably going to be Werenski, Gabranson, Gavrikov, Boquist, Bean, Peak, and then maybe Nick Blankenberg, maybe Gavin Bayreuther, maybe Jake Christiansen, maybe David Jiricek. Like, Jay Christian's going to have to come into camp and he's going to have to try and take this spot by force. And I'm not sure that's. I don't think being the 7th defenseman is the best thing for Christiansen's development right now. Again, that's something else we've kind of talked about with our young players is if he has to sit in the Monsters blue line this season, I don't see a problem with that. Honestly, he's still young enough that he's developing still. And I think the Monsters will probably be better this season than they were last season. The Monsters were kind of decimated both by injury and also by the fact that the Blue Jackets were decimated by injury and kept taking all of their good players. I think giving him a full season with the Monsters is not the worst thing in the world. And again, I would rather have him playing, 20 to 25 minutes a night on the Monsters than have him sitting in the press box or playing, 4 minutes, 8 minutes a night with the Blue Jackets. I'd like to think that he wouldn't get that treatment if he was on the Blue Jackets. I'd like to think that if they called him up, they would play him, and that seems to have been the kind of the MO for Brad Larson is the young players have not really. There was not a lot of healthy scratches for the Blue Jackets this season for a lot of their young players. I think Chidakov was healthy scratched for a while, a couple of games, but he also got sent down to Cleveland, I think literally just for one game, but better than having him sitting and doing nothing for a week. Players went up and down a lot to get reps in, so they weren't sitting there when the Blue Jackets were, when they got shut down around Christmas for COVID, during the All-Star game, things like that. So I like to think that Brad Larson knows what he's doing, and obviously having come from being an AHL coach, he knows how important it is to get those players playing important minutes to have them for the NHL team. And so I think it really will be a case of if Jake Christiansen's not getting significant NHL ice time, he will get sent down to the Monsters. And honestly, don't hate it. I think there are other players that can be utilized in that seventh defenseman spot. I think there are other players that can even be utilized in kind of the 5 or 6 defenseman spot. And I think Jake Christiansen deserves the chance to develop more than kind of the opportunities that he's had so far. I mean, he's like I say, he's literally only 22. He turns 23 in a couple of weeks. This is it's gonna be his fourth season in the pros. Technically, it's only gonna be his second full season though. So I'm fully willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, give him an extra season to develop, and then maybe see where the Blue Jackets defense is after that. And if the worst thing that happens is Jake Christensen turns into a really, really, really good AHL defenseman, like for a guy that they didn't even draft, for a guy that was a free agent out of the WHL, like I'm super okay with that being how it turns out. Giving him a letter grade, I'm giving him an A, which I know doesn't make sense to his NHL, but based on NHL debut goal, I think he scored in his first game actually. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he was one of those guys. And the work he did for the Monsters, like again, I'm grading on. I'm either grading on a curve or not grading on a curve. Someone is going to have to explain grading on a curve to me because it's not how it works over here. But not all player grades are created equally. And honestly, I think the work he did for the Monsters, the work he did in the 8 games that he was called up, I think they're deserving of an A. And I think that's really a hot take. Honestly, I think that's I could make the argument to give him a B, but it's my grading system and also it's my podcast. So Jake Christian gets an A from me, and hopefully we get to see a lot more from him next season, either on the Monsters blue line or on the Blue Jackets blue line. Either or, I am not fussy. In a minute, we are going to finish off the show. We've got a couple of really fun mailbag questions, so we're going to dive into those next on Locked On Blue Jackets. So the first question I got was from Ann Kimmel, one of my colleagues over here at Locked On. She does a wonderful job with the Locked On Preds podcast. So and she's big on Latvian players, big on goalies, as are we all. And she wants to know how I feel about how Elvis is going to do this season. And honestly, I think Elvis is going to be just fine this season. I know a lot of people were like, wow, that contract, it's what, 5 million per year for the next 5 seasons. That contract's going to be a problem. And I've kind of we're going to talk about Elvis in a couple of weeks when I do the goalie reviews for the season, but Elvis was, I don't think, in a very good space last season. He was grieving his friend. He was probably suffering from, some kind of PTSD, some kind of trauma, things like that. And even with that, I'm still pretty sure that he came out of the season with an above 900 save percentage, which, considering how poor the Blue Jackets were defensively last season, I'm calling that a win. I'm just pulling up his career stats now. Yeah, he had a 907 save percentage. And I mean, that is still pretty good. And also that's low for Elvis, but I'm okay with that being how it goes, because he hasn't had a sub 900 save percentage basically ever. Well, in the playoffs for HC Lugano in his last season in Switzerland, he had an 872 in 4 games. They lost all 4 games, but I don't, it is what it is. His last 4 seasons or last 3 seasons with the Blue Jackets, he had a 916 last season. He had a 907 last season. He had a 916 the season before. He had a 949 with the Cleveland Monsters, and then he had a 923 in his rookie season with the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I'm super not worried about Elvis. I think he's going to be just fine. Is he going to be $5 million good? Maybe not. But again, he's still pretty young. He, I believe, is 26. I didn't look it up, but he's certainly not past his prime. I think maybe we're kind of seeing him about to hit his peak, or he's probably in his peak. But if we can get another 910, 915 or above from Elvis this season, I think we'll be laughing. Honestly, I think the Blue Jackets are going to be just fine. I think Elvis is going to be just fine, maybe better than fine. He could surprise everyone. I know he sure did surprise me with those 5 shutouts in 8 games in his rookie season. So, what's to say that he doesn't come out and do that again? So, yeah, that's how I feel about Elvis. He's going to be just fine. We're going to talk about it in a little bit more detail in a couple of weeks when I do the Elvis season review. But that's kind of a general mini overview on how I feel about Elvis. And then I got one more question from another wonderful colleague over at Locked On. Laura Saba, the active stick, wants to know which former Blue Jacket who is no longer on the team do I miss the most? And I was actually talking about how all of my jerseys are obsolete now because I keep buying jerseys and then the players in between 1 to 3 seasons later will get traded. So I have a Nick Foligno jersey, I have a Brandon Saad jersey, I have a Pierre-Luc Dubois jersey, a Cam Atkinson jersey, and a no, I think that's all of them actually, unless I'd missed out saying Brandon Dubinsky. I have 5 jerseys. I have Dubinsky, Saad, Foligno, Atkinson, Foligno, Saad, Dubinsky, Atkinson, Dubois. Yeah, 5. We'll see if that makes it into the final cut. And all of those guys are no longer on the team. Any of those guys could be an answer to this question. But I think the answer I am going to go with is Sergei Bobrovsky. I really, really liked Sergei Bobrovsky. I thought he was maybe one of the best players that this team has had since Rick Nash. I think had he stayed, there would have been a real argument for him being maybe the best goalie to play for the Blue Jackets. I think he leads in basically all of the goalie stats for this team, which is super cool. But he just commanded too much money, too much term. He's going to be like 40 when his contract is up. He's making $10 million down in Florida. There's rumors of buyouts and everything, trades with retained salary. So while I miss Bobrovsky, I don't regret that the Blue Jackets let him walk. I think it was the right decision. I think especially with kind of the emergence of Merzlikins the last couple of seasons, I think Jonas Korpisalo has been better than a lot of people expected. I think a lot of people thought that when Bobrovsky went, the Blue Jackets would just kind of fall apart, and they kind of seem to have managed to patch a hole in that goaltending. The upcoming Tarasov is really exciting. Obviously, the goaltending depth has kind of suffered a little bit with the passing of Matisse Kivlenieks, the departure of Eddie Vevalainen, but they look like they're in a really good spot. And so while I miss Bobrovsky, the player, I don't necessarily miss him as much as I thought I would. But he's still my answer for which player do I miss the most. So that's that. Just kind of a silly little mailbag that I thought could be fun. It's a Monday. We'll have some fun with it. We'll talk goalies, and that's all I've got for you today. We're still on a 3-week schedule, so I will be back on Wednesday with another player review. And if I check my sheet, we are going to be looking at Vladislav Gavrikov on Wednesday, which should be a lot of fun. We all love Vladislav Gavrikov on the ice, off the ice, so we're going to be talking about all of that. Before I finish up, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're also over on YouTube. If you want to check us out over there, then I super appreciate that. And you're never going to have to get behind a paywall for a locked on product. That's our promise to you. So, I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. Got the podcast right in one. I got the Twitter right in one, and then immediately messed it up by saying podcast instead of Twitter. It's fine. It's very late here. You can find the podcast at LO_Blue Jackets. If you want to email me, comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And I think that's everything. So until Wednesday, make sure you stay locked on.